I'm Tony Northrup, and thanks for watching my beginning photography video training series. I value your time, so in this first section, I'm gonna cram all the biggest hitters, all the best tips I can, because not everybody gets through every video in the series, so even if you just watch this one, I want you to get as much value out of it as possible. And the first thing I wanna say is, people have this misconception where they pick up a camera, and if the pictures don't turn out, they think they're a bad photographer. And if the pictures turn out great, they think they're a good photographer. Good news, bad news, neither one of those are true. You're not born a good or a bad photographer. Photography is not a talent. Talent, it just describes some physical trait that is you're born with, like your hair color or your eye color. Photography is a skill. It is developed through experience, practice, study, and most of all, time. If you want to be a good photographer, you just put some time in. It doesn't have to be labor. It's a labor of love. You just go take pictures like you always are, but I'll teach you to be a little bit more deliberate about it. And then as you go through your day-to-day life, you will continually get better. I see some people go from not knowing anything about photography to being great photographers in a matter of months, if they have a lot of free time and if they put a lot of energy into it. Some people do that. Other people, they can only put maybe a few minutes a week into something, but they get better over time and over years and over decades. And you're never done learning as a photographer. Ansel Adams practiced photography for 40, 50 years and continued to get better. And all of us do that. You never finish. We're all in some different stage of learning. If you're at the beginning, that means you're actually going to be learning the fastest. It's the most exciting time. So just be patient. Henri Cartier-Bresson said, your first 10,000 photographs are your worst. And I love that saying because it's true. 10,000 it's a large number. And after you get through those, they will get better. Your second 1,000 pictures will be better than your first. Just stick with it and keep taking pictures. I want to urge you to not get caught up on the technical side of it. Parts of my audience are very kind of technical left-brain people, and then other parts are more creative, artistic people. And believe it or not, it's the more creative and artistic people who tend to excel, especially in their first couple of years of study. Because the technical people tend to get caught up in the technical side of things. They're thinking about their lens sharpness and their camera settings and am I following this rule correctly? When really they should be thinking about things like lighting and composition, storytelling and mood, the artistic sides of photography. And I'm going to teach all the specifics of those throughout this course, but I urge you not to get bogged down in the science of it. That can be important. It's especially important for troubleshooting and stuff, and we will cover the science and the technical part of it. Photography in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, that was a very technical time. People were all worried about their f-stops and just getting the exposure correct, and it was a technical field filled with the engineering types. But today, the cameras take care of most of those technical parts, and that's great because you can focus on the art of it, on making art, because photography is an art more so than a technical skill. I'm also going to urge you to chill out on buying all the camera gear, because so many people, they start photography and in their first week they're writing me, oh, it's time to upgrade my camera. What kind of camera should I buy? What sort of lenses should I buy? The guy at the camera store said I should buy these 7 filters. And pretty soon they've blown their whole budget and they don't know how to use it. You don't know what camera gear you should buy yet because you haven't figured out what type of photographer you are. We're all different. Some people, their beginning camera is going to be just fine. After you practice, after you shoot for a couple of months or years, your camera gear will at some point start to fail you. Maybe you are taking pictures of your kids' soccer games and your camera keeps missing focus. That's the time when you should say, maybe I need to upgrade my camera or my lens. But right away, you really don't need to. Learn, and what you need to buy will become obvious to you because you will discover the hard way certain deficiencies in your gear. There are some exceptions. If you have a once-in-a-lifetime event coming up, if it's your kid's wedding and you want to make sure that you nail those shots and you don't get a second chance, then you can't necessarily learn the hard way that your gear is going to fail you. In that case, you need to get out there and practice ahead of time. Don't be watching these videos the night before the wedding, realizing you're not quite ready. I'm also going to urge you to use your smartphone. Consider your smartphone a camera. It's the best camera because it's the one you have with you all the time. And take lots of pictures with it. don't feel bad. Don't be a camera snob. Some people think if you're using a smartphone, it's not real photography and you're not a real photographer. That's not true. Some of the best photographers in the world, some of the most popular and successful photographers in the world are shooting with their smartphone. And even those photographers who've been shooting for 30 years, I know they lean heavily on their smartphones nowadays because it is a powerful tool. You should learn some basics about it. Things like how to use the exposure compensation, that's really easy. How to zoom in, how to focus on a specific point, generally just by touching the screen. How to adjust the white balance as needed. How to blur the background a bit. The iPhone 7 Plus here has a portrait mode that'll do that for you, but other apps and different phones can do that in post. And how to do some basic editing. You could use an app like Adobe Lightroom Mobile or Snapseed or the apps that are built into your phone to do some editing. These are the same things that you go through with a big camera, just in this portable way. There are going to be days when it feels too cumbersome to pick up a big camera and walk around with it and bring it out to dinner or whatever. And those are the times you'll have your phone, but not your camera. And it doesn't mean you don't have to be practicing photography. You always have your smartphone, which means you're always a photographer. Now, one composition tip that I asked my friends, what should I tell beginning photographers? And one of the most common things was compositionally, they need to fill the frame. What I see people doing all the time is taking sort of wide angle shots that have just a ton of distractions in them. So this is an example of a picture with a lot of distractions. And my two subjects here, Chelsea and Roxy, they are pretty big in the frame. But you can see the background is sharp and in focus and pretty much distracting you from the actual subjects. The background is the same brightness. It's not especially blurry. So you can see the subjects, but at the same time, it's not that great of a picture. Here's a better portrait. You can see the background here is blurry. All your eye sees is the model here, and there are no distractions. So can you see the difference between this picture and this picture? Fill the frame with whatever your subject is and eliminate as many of distractions as possible. Here's another example that I took at a concert. You can see this is a wide angle shot and it shows more of the band and it shows some of the foreground, and maybe that's an important part of the story. I'm not saying that either one of these pictures are bad, because there is no right and wrong. But this next picture is certainly more powerful in that it fills the frame with our subject and it cuts out many of those distractions. That is one of the jobs of the photographer, is to frame the shot. As the photographer, you're always choosing what's included in the frame and what's not included in the frame. And that is part of the art of photography. Here's a wildlife example. You can see this picture's okay. It's a heron here and it looks pretty good. It turned out all right, but there's so many things in there besides the heron. The picture is of the heron, or maybe the picture is even of the heron fishing, which would make me want to include the water. But the picture is definitely not that big log or all the grasses behind it. Those things are just distractions. Here's a picture of a great blue heron where there are distractions behind it, but because of the difference in brightness, those distractions largely disappear. And you can see that this picture is a more powerful picture than this picture. Get close to your subject, fill the frame with your subject, and eliminate as many of the distractions when you can. You can't always get to choose a clean composition, but you should try and you should think about it. And most importantly, you should decide what the subject is in your picture, whether it's a story or a person or an expression, or maybe it's just a mood. We'll get into that more. Take lots of pictures, but delete most of them. A lot of photography snobs will be upset by this. They'll say, oh no, a real photographer only needs to take one picture. And I'm going to prove to you that that is not true in so many different scenarios. And if you come from the film era, you might feel like each frame you take has some expense to it. But in the digital era, there's really almost no expense per picture. It's not uncommon if I'm just taking a quick snapshot of somebody, like a casual portrait, I might take 5 to 10 shots. Sometimes if it's an important shot, like at a wedding, I'll take more than 100 shots of one particular scene, especially with a group photo, just to make sure that I get the very best possible picture. The more pictures you take, the better that one picture that you choose to share is going to be, because any two pictures will be slightly different, provided that there's some life in it. People, animals, or a moving car or anything. Even something like a landscape, the sun can move, the clouds can move. Things will vary from frame to frame. Here's an example of a portrait. And this shot was carefully posed. The lighting is great, but the picture itself didn't turn out. Chelsea on the right there has her eyes closed. Liz in the middle, her face is a little weird because they kind of caught her between expressions. And if I just took one shot of this scene, this might have been it. And what would I have done then? Are you going to go to the bride and say, yeah, here's the picture of you? That's great. No, she'd be terribly upset. Good thing I snapped a few frames. This is another frame. But look, here Liz got distracted by something off camera. Chelsea and Siobhan look great, but Liz is... So this is not the picture I'd want to share. Good thing I took a bunch of pictures. Look, one of them actually turned out. I got everybody looking at the camera. It wouldn't matter the skill level of the photographer. You can't be confident that one frame is going to nail it. Just put your camera on continuous shutter, and instead of rattling off one picture, rattle off 3 or rattle off 5. It doesn't take you any longer. Ching, 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 ching. You'll get a few pictures, and then later you go through and you pick just one of them. You're not going to share. I don't want you sharing 5 pictures on Facebook. I see people do that all the time. They share too many pictures. Share as few pictures as you can to tell the story you want to tell, but take plenty of pictures. Here's an example of soccer. Really, I get people telling me that a good photographer could get good sports pictures with just one frame. But something like soccer, maybe you want to catch that moment when your athlete hits the ball right before it goes into the goal. But the thing about athletes is they're trying to trick each other. They don't want the goalie to know they're going to kick it, or they want the goalie to think it's going in a different direction. So how are you as a photographer, how are you supposed to know when that split second is if they're trying to trick each other? You also don't know if the goalie is going to catch it or not. So you're shooting proactively, and you're also just holding down the shutter for the entire time when something cool might happen. But also, if you have more frames, you'll have a better, the picture that you choose is going to be more perfect. So here's a sequence of my favorite goalie trying and missing the ball going in. Well, she deflected it. It didn't actually score. But you can see I have a lot of frames here to choose from, and one of these is going to be better than the others. If I took one picture, maybe that would be the picture. That's a pretty good one, but maybe that one's a little bit better because her hands have contact. Or this one shows that she missed the ball. It tells a different story. If you have all these pictures, you get to choose which of the photos tells the story the best. Here's another example of a long jump. You can see she's coming in for the long jump. I couldn't do just one frame here. One of these pictures is going to be better than the others. And in this case, the picture I decided to share was this one because I felt like it had the most motion to it. I liked her expression. In some of the other frames, her hand was blocking her face. But simply by taking a lot of pictures, I had more options. And there's no way as a photographer that I could hit that split second moment when her hand went from this to this. I would not know. It's impossible. Action happens too fast. Even with a portrait, even with somebody standing still, there's tiny little micro expressions. You know where their face might scrunch up a little bit like that? You can't time that, but you can take plenty of frames and let yourself pick it in post. Here's a wildlife example. This osprey is a hunting bird that will pull fish out of the water. Here it had hit the water, and I started taking pictures, and as I went through these, one of these pictures was better than the others. This ended up being the picture that I was sharing because the light is hitting the fish and you can see the bird's eye. But if I'd only taken one frame, maybe this would have been it. And you can't see the bird's eye. And if you didn't get the eye, you didn't get the shot. So I'm so glad that I took many different pictures. This one's okay, but you can't see the fish's eye. See how this picture's better? You can see the bird's eye and the fish's eye. This one, the fish fell out of the frame completely. Another good reason to take multiple pictures is for sharpness. When you push the shutter button on a camera, look how I push it. I push it like this and the camera twists a little bit like this. A good tip is to try to roll your finger on it and just push it gently to improve sharpness a little bit. But there's always going to be a little bit of twist there. So for the first picture that you take, there'll be a little bit of twist. And then when you release the shutter, you'll be twisting it back a little bit. If you take 3 pictures, click, 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 that second one is probably going to be just a hair sharper than the first and third one. So set your camera to continuous shutter. We have tutorials, free tutorials for just about every major camera out there at sdp.io/tutorial. And in the description of that video, you'll see links that will show you how, it'll allow you to jump forward in the video just to show you how to use continuous shutter on your camera. I promise that will do so much to improve your photography. You also control the timing of a photo. The timing of the photo can make such a huge, huge difference. I hear all the time from people who went on vacation to someplace gorgeous. They went to Yellowstone, and then they show their picture and they're like, this picture's not very good. What happened? It's probably timing. This is Ledge Lighthouse in New London, Connecticut, near where I live. And I have visited this location more than 100 times. And I'm going to show you some of the different pictures. This picture flat out sucks, right? It's not a good picture of the Ledge Lighthouse. Here it is on a foggy day. Maybe that's a little more interesting, but it's still not a good picture of Ledge Lighthouse. Okay, it cleared up a little bit. We have a lot of rough weather here on the ocean, right? Long Island Sound. And so we're getting a little bit better. Whoa, here I am on a clear day. Suddenly it's so much better. This is the same camera, the same photographer, the same lens. Is my skill changing? No, the time is changing. The weather conditions are changing. Time controls so many things, but people don't think about that. They just show up to a location and hope that it's going to be great. But it doesn't matter. If you just dropped Ansel Adams into Yellowstone on any random day, he probably wouldn't get a great picture. Ansel Adams got great pictures because he spent decades out in the woods taking pictures. Here's an example of 3 pictures that I took 10 minutes apart. Can you see what a drastic difference there is in just choosing to wait around for 20 minutes? On this particular day, I saw it was kind of clear. I got that first picture, but you know what I did? I looked up towards the sun and I saw that there were clouds passing in front of the sun and that the clouds were moving. It wasn't a completely overcast day, it was a partly cloudy day. And so I thought, I'm just going to hang out for a minute. And that cloud moved, and then the sun came out. And that's the difference between the first and second picture here. So when you can spend decades at a place, like Ansel Adams, you probably can't do that. If you can plan a week at a place that you want to get good pictures of, that's a lot better than one day at a place. But even if you can just wait 10 minutes at a location, you might get a drastically better picture. So get up a little earlier, grab a cup of coffee before you hit the place you want to take pictures of, and just be a little patient. It will pay off. Not every time, but sometimes it will. Here's another picture of the Ledge Lighthouse. To this day, we had crazy lighting. I don't even remember what was going on. This is an unedited picture, and it's interesting. It's a silhouette, but nonetheless, the light and the color was really cool. Here's another picture of the ferry going past. It's a terrible picture. It's overcast, it's bright, but it tells this extra little story of the action that actually happens in the Long Island Sound, and sometimes that's a story you want to tell. That's a nuclear submarine. A crew of people, including one of my close friends, is going out for a 6-month mission. So it's not a great picture of the lighthouse, but again, it's telling a particular story that has some context to me because I happen to know the person and his family, and he's sailing out past the lighthouse. It's just about the same angle, same camera, same lens, but a different time tells a different story. Here, we get into night photography. Your same location that you shoot all the time, that you see all the time, is drastically different at night. We will cover night photography, but get yourself a tripod, do a longer exposure, and you'll see the world in a whole different way. It's completely different than the pictures we looked at during the day, right? The light's on now, the mood's a little bit different. This picture was taken seconds later because it's a lighthouse, it's turning. But just about everything you see around you is changing pretty dramatically from minute to minute. But because the light is shining into the camera here, it's so much more interesting because it is a lighthouse, and that's part of the story, right? Whoa. I've planned this picture for months. Well, Chelsea and I planned it. It's the moon rising behind the lighthouse. But it's not just the moon rising. It was a pretty rare event. It's a full moon rising. It's rising in a position where I could see both of them in a single camera frame from land. I didn't need to be on a boat. The moon moves around on the horizon, so you have to kind of plan that out. And the moon was rising while the sun was setting. So there was still enough sunlight to light up the lighthouse so that it wasn't completely dark. All these conditions came together on this particular day. And it was about timing. And that's the difference between this picture and this first picture that I took, right? That's a big difference. Same photographer, same gear. Timing. Take your time, be patient. Finally, here's my favorite picture of the Ledge Lighthouse taken on the same night as this one, but about 10 minutes later, when I was running down the beach to try to get the moon to line up with the lighthouse, and I'm really happy with this picture. It took me a lot of practice to get there. It took me, well, I lived in this town for like 8 years before these weather conditions managed to line up just right. If a cloud had come through, it would have ruined everything, but everything happened to line up. It took me years of work to get to this picture. Be patient. You control time. You're passing through it. Everything around you is changing. You can just wait and stuff will change and be better. Sometimes it'll be worse, but sometimes it'll be better. And because you control time, you also control light. Light is constantly changing. Clouds pass in front of the sun. The sun rises and sets. There are overcast days and hazy days and clear days. You also control the weather because you control the time. The weather is constantly changing. You're not Storm from the X-Men. You can't make rain appear or go away. You can't make lightning appear. It will happen, but you can be prepared and you can be there ready to take a picture when the conditions are perfect. Quick tip about the weather, have yourself a fog plan. As you saw, the fog can drastically change a scene. As you're going about your day, keep places in mind in your local area that might look amazing in the fog. And then if you wake up early one day and you see it's foggy, you grab your camera and you go there, but be ready for that fog. Here's some more examples of some bird photos that I took just in different weather. These are all blue jays. They're all taken with the same camera, but you can see just with a little bit of difference in time and weather, how drastically different the pictures are. This ended up being my favorite blue jay picture out of the thousands of blue jay pictures that I've taken. Why? Because of the weather. And I had to get a little cold. But waiting a few years, I happened to get a day when it was bright enough, even though it was snowing, that I could take a good picture. And the bird held still long enough to collect some snow, and it was snowing heavily enough that you could actually see the snow in the frame. You control the story. And that last picture told a different story. These pictures all told some sort of story. This is a story of the bird in a bird bath. And this is a story of the bird on a cold day, kind of surviving, looking for some food. You control the elements that are in the story. Storytelling is the key part of photography. It's the difference between a boring picture and a great picture is the story that it tells. Don't take pictures of things, but take pictures of stories. A story it's your daughter's birthday and she's there with her friends and she's having a great time. It's not a picture of your daughter. You need to tell this entire story. We'll cover that more later. But here's a practice that you can do. Take a picture of the same spot over and over again. Take a picture of it at 6:50 in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, and 7:10 in the morning. And then on your lunch break, go back, take another picture of it. Get up in the middle of the night, take a picture of it. Do what I did to the Ledge Lighthouse and just keep taking a picture of the same place on different days, at different times, just whenever you can. Don't kill yourself. Get out there and you will compare those pictures and you will see a drastic difference. And that process will teach you one of the most important aspects of photography, which is that the world changes. You just control when and where you are. Along those lines, I want to say, if you're traveling and you go into the souvenir shop and you see those postcards, you're probably not going to beat those postcards. You're probably not going to get a better picture than are on those postcards. Here's why. Those postcards are usually taken by a photographer who lives there. That photographer gets to choose the best moment in years or decades, and they capture that best moment and print it. If you're there for a day or a week, what are the odds that the best moment over the course of decades is when you're going to happen to be at one location? If you're only there for 2 minutes, the odds are really, really small. If you decide to spend there a few days or a few hours at one particular location, your odds definitely go up. The quality of your picture will go up. But odds are you're still not going to beat that photographer who stayed in a place for decades and really got to know the location. You also control the viewpoints. You don't have to take a picture from where you're standing. You control the background of the subject by moving around. Bend your knees, get down low if you're taking pictures of small kids or dogs. Getting down low also changes the background by shooting up more towards the sky, which can simplify the background. You could also stand up high, lift the camera over your head, point down towards the ground. That might eliminate distractions by just showing grass or water behind your subject. It can change the point of view. It might feel more like an adult looking down at a kid, besides just changing the background. Here are some different pictures of the Ledge Lighthouse, again, just taken from different viewpoints. Same subject, but you can see this one's just square, kind of boring. The horizon is just straight and flat. This one was taken up close, and it has so much more depth. And this one was framed to include some storytelling, some tourists who are taking pictures. Different viewpoints can tell drastically different stories about the same subject. It's not just a matter of the subject that you're taking a picture of or your camera settings, but where you are as the photographer. I also urge you to use your pictures. Too many people take pictures and then they just leave them on their camera and they never show them to anybody. Maybe they're embarrassed, maybe they're shy. I already told you that your first 10,000 pictures were going to be the worst, but you need to get out there and share some of those pictures. Make prints on your wall. Our house is covered with prints, and some of them are not very good. Some of them are from early in my career and they're just not that great. But when I put up a picture on my wall of a picture that's not great, I have to look at it every day. Sometimes I like a picture at first and I put it on my wall, and then 6 weeks into it, I'm like, oh man, I really blew the lighting on that, or I should have composed that a little bit differently. Looking at your own pictures will teach you more about it, but it also gives you a purpose to your photography. Now your pictures become decorations for your house. You might decide, oh, I want my living room to have that beachy feel, so I'm going to go out and get some beach pictures. Maybe they're close-ups of seashells or the water, or maybe it's your family at the beach, but now you have a purpose. You don't have to make prints to share your pictures. You can go to Instagram. Have you heard of it? It's a really popular social network, and it started around smartphone photography. It's okay to post smartphone pictures there, but most of the most serious photographers in the world now are on Instagram. It's not just for teenagers. Go to Instagram. You can look me up, Tony Northrup. Look up Chelsea Northrup too while you're at it. But share your pictures. Get involved in the bigger photography community. There are lots of photography communities online, but Instagram is by far the biggest. So get involved. Get your foot in the water. You're new. Your pictures aren't going to be the best in the world, but it's a start, and you're getting better every day. Another great place to share pictures is Facebook. That's where your friends will probably see it, but that's good. And I'll break down the fourth wall a little bit. One of the reasons that it's great to share your pictures on Facebook is that your friends will say nice things about them. They will give you likes. They will say, hey, that's a great picture. You're getting really good at this. And that in and of itself might be the biggest factor that separates people who will go on to become great photographers and those who will put their cameras down and never take another picture. That encouragement. Because I told you earlier, photography is not a talent, it's a skill that's learned. So you have to find the motivation, the energy to put more time in and to continue learning. And most people will do that if they have a little bit of positive encouragement. So go on Facebook and share your pictures with your friends and family. And I'll bet within a few weeks, you'll have people harassing you to take pictures of their weddings or to take portraits of them, because you will get better fast and people will notice and start to want to take advantage of you. But it's a good thing. We also have an amazing community on Facebook that you can visit at sdp.io/FB. And because you bought this video training series, you're entitled to go there and participate and share your feedback and share your pictures and get feedback from the more than like 25,000 people that are members now. If you have any problems getting in there, email me at sdp.io or email me at tony@northrup.org. I also want to encourage you to make shooting easy. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make is they decide that they're not going to take a picture unless they can get it absolutely perfect. And so they like always carry around their tripod and like a dozen lenses, and they keep it in a bag, and they keep a cap on their lens. And then they're like, they see a scene, they're like, oh man, that duck is pretty. I'm just gonna take my backpack off here, unzip it, pull my camera out. Now I gotta change my lens, put my lens on, put the lens caps back on that, put that back in the bag. Now I gotta take my lens cap off. Oh, I better pull my tripod out, extend the legs. And pretty soon it's like 3 minutes in. If they're traveling with their family's all like, oh my God, can we just go? Give yourself a break. You'll be a better photographer if you take more pictures, and you will take more pictures if it's easy. So this is my recommended configuration right here. Any camera, doesn't matter. Get a lens, get a strap, and then get a lens hood like this. Don't use no lens cap. I know some of you are going to freak out by me telling you not to get a lens cap. Fine. Use a lens cap if you want. I don't care. Put it in a bag. But if you just keep this on your shoulder and walk around, you can shoot like this. Snap. And then your family's not annoyed with you. And then you won't feel self-conscious about it. You'll be more likely to take pictures. And, you know, this is pretty safe. It's swinging on your shoulder. It'll bang against stuff once in a while. But it'll be pretty well protected. I don't know. I can't promise you that it's never going to be scratched, but what good is it doing you if it's in your bag and you aren't actually using it? Give yourself a break. Make photography easy. And by the way, I've never scratched a front element just walking around with a camera like that. The front elements are generally very durable. You don't need to have a filter on it or anything. I also want to suggest that you think about the final format of your photos, because sometimes we just see something pretty and we try to capture it. Just think, how am I going to share this? If you are planning to share it on Instagram, well, you can stick any formatted picture on Instagram, landscape, portrait, but pictures look best on Instagram if they're square because the thumbnails work best. So this picture, for example, wouldn't really work as a square format because you can see the red lines there. It would just be cropped in a weird way. So if I were shooting this for this family and they wanted to put the picture on Instagram, I'd step back and I'd leave a little room around the edges. I might compose it a little differently. If I wanted to put it in a video like this, which is formatted 16:9 widescreen, well, that would just get weird again. And I'd want to think about that. So an 8:10 picture is cropped from the way most cameras will take pictures. You'd be cropping about an inch off of the left and the right. And that has ruined so many different pictures for people. So know your final format. And if you're in doubt, shoot a little bit wide or take multiple pictures at different zooms and maybe turn the camera sideways once in a while. Shoot vertically because you don't know. There might be this perfect space on a wall in your living room, but it needs to fit a vertically oriented picture. And you'll go through your whole library of pictures looking for something to put there and realize you never turn your camera sideways. So think about the final format a little bit. I also want to talk about the complexity and detail of pictures. This is something that no film photography book would ever teach you because this lesson is something I've learned the hard way in the digital era. Good thumbnails result in people liking and clicking a picture, which means that a picture online will do best when it looks good like this, like a little tiny thing. Your thumbnails for images should be stark. And if you're sharing it online, especially something like Instagram, where it's largely consumed on a small format like this, have a really stark background. The bigger you're going to be printing, sharing, and viewing the image, the more detail you can include. This image is very simple. It makes a good thumbnail. You could see that tiny and recognize it as a sunset behind a palm tree. I know it's very postcardy, but this kind of thing does great on Instagram. This picture does pretty well. You're definitely paid off if you explore the detail a little bit, but the colors are bright. You can make out the shape even as a small thumbnail. There's not much to be gained. If I were to make it 6 feet wide, there's no additional detail that you might want to explore, so it's better in small formats, but it would work great online. This image, on the other hand, Machu Picchu in Peru, is very detailed. And as a thumbnail, you'd pretty much just see like a bright upper right corner and then some blue and green, and you wouldn't realize that there's a lot of reward if you are to explore it a little bit. This image works best when it's printed really, really big. So as part of thinking about your final format, think about how much detail that you're including in it. This picture of Shibuya Station in Tokyo is cool, but it's so busy that it never did well online because there's just too cluttered. If you look at it on a phone or something, it just looks like a big mess. But if you take the time to study it, you can see the individual billboards and all the individual people moving in the night. It becomes a little more interesting. Next, I'd like to encourage you to be deliberate about your pictures. Make pictures, don't just take them. So many people just stand there, they see something, bam, they take a picture of it, and that's the whole process. You can do that. Do that. Take the picture quick. You got something there. Now, take another second and think, what little things could I do differently? Should I kneel? Should I raise the camera up? Should I move a foot to my left or a foot to my right? Maybe I should, if I'm taking a picture of a person, maybe I should move them into a shade. Here's a couple of pictures of Chelsea. We were out and about and I took a picture of her, and that's a picture of her. Looks like a picture a lot of people would take. And then this is a picture that I took moments later. You can see the difference here. You see this building in the right corner up here? There's bricks there. We just walked over and leaned her against it. So it provided a little bit more of a plain background, but still an interesting background. It was also moving her into the shade. So you can see the light on her face here. Here she's like being blinded and the sun's on her face, so she has to squint. Here the light is nice and soft, so she's free to open her eyes up. It's more flattering for portraiture to have soft light. And she just took her hat off and just posed a little bit. It wasn't like she did some big intricate pose. I didn't say, put your hand here, do this, do that. I just said, hey, just stand against that wall for a sec, lean against it a little bit, take your hat off. Bam. 30 seconds later, you can go from this to this. It just takes a little bit of effort. Why isn't your picture great? I get this all the time. People go and they take pictures and they have such high expectations. Why isn't the picture great? Well, I put together a little formula. It's not really a scientific formula, but you can think of it like this if you're analytically inclined. The quality of your image is equal to your personal experience as a photographer, the amount of planning that you put into the image, your own vision for what the final photograph is going to be, and the quality of your equipment. If any of these are zero, you remember what happens in multiplication, right? Multiply anything times zero, it ends up being zero. If you have no experience, your picture is going to be crap. If you have a lot of experience but you don't do any planning, it's still not going to be a great picture. If you have experience and you do planning but you never really had a vision for what the final image was going to look like, you need to envision this stuff. It's not going to turn out good. Of course, if you don't have a camera, you're not going to get great image either. All of these come together to create a good quality image. So if you aren't happy with your pictures, ask yourself, do you have experience yet? Because that takes time. Did you do any planning? I see so many people take pictures of their food, but they don't bother moving their fork just a little bit to the left. That's just a little bit of planning, a little bit of vision. And finally, did you have some equipment? Again, your smartphone is great. That's a pretty good equipment. There are definitely times when some nicer equipment will make a difference in your picture. And do a little editing too. It's not cheating. Every photograph you see professionally, well, just about everyone, has had some editing done. There are free editing apps out there, especially for your phone. Snapseed is great on your phone. If you're using a computer, a Mac, or a PC, I still recommend Adobe Lightroom. There are alternatives out there, but I've tested them all, and I like Lightroom the best still. You can get Lightroom at sdp.io/Adobe deal. They have like a monthly thing now. It works pretty well. So get familiar with a little bit of editing. You don't need to be some Photoshop master who's like replacing faces and moving noses around and stuff. Just crop, change your brightness a little bit, maybe bring up the shadows, something like that. If you get familiar with those basics, it's really easy. It'll make a big difference. Also carry extras. We've all been ready to take the best pictures of our lives, only to go find, oh man, my camera doesn't have a battery in it. Oh, I didn't bring a memory card, or my memory card is full, or my battery is dead. Get yourself, what I recommend is going to Amazon, searching for SD cards or whatever kind of memory card your camera takes, and find like the $10 versions. You can sometimes get 4 or 8 gigabyte SD cards for $10, and buy like 4 of those. Put one in the glove box of your car, Put one in your purse. Put one in your office desk. Just scatter them around your life, wherever you're likely to be when you're taking pictures, because there's going to come some point when you forget your memory card because you had it in your computer or something, or your memory card is full. And batteries, especially if you have a smaller camera like a mirrorless camera, have an extra battery with you and travel with a charger of some kind, because you'll be so frustrated when you run out of batteries. To help prevent yourself from forgetting a battery or a memory card in your camera, never close an empty door. And please don't analyze that phrase grammatically. But here's what I mean. I'm going to open this door up and I'll get this. And let's say I need to charge the battery. I'll take it out, I'll put it in the charger. Don't close this. If you close this, you'll see the camera the next day, pick it up and walk away with it, and you won't notice that the battery. So just leave that door open. Put the camera someplace safe where the door's not going to get busted off. Same thing goes for the memory card. When you put the battery back in, that's the time that you can finally properly close the door. I didn't do that right. And finally, back up your pictures. I get terrified emails from people saying, oh my God, my computer died. Someone broke into our house and they stole my computer, and I don't care about my computer. I just care about the pictures on it. There's no reason to have your pictures in just one place. You have to, your pictures are some of the most important things that you own. Please have them backed up somewhere beside your house. A good way to do that is to buy a big memory card, like a 128 gigabyte or 256 gigabyte memory card, and just keep using it for months or years so that you don't ever have to take it out and reformat it. That way, your year's worth of pictures will all be backed up in your camera in case somebody takes your computer or it explodes or something. Another good way to do it is to find yourself a cloud backup service. I can't recommend a specific cloud backup service just because I've used several and they didn't necessarily work out great, but look up something like Google Drive, Microsoft OneDrive, CrashPlan. There are a dozen different cloud backup services out there, and get one of them installed on your computer, backing up all your data across the internet so you have an offline backup in case of natural disaster or something. Please, it breaks people's hearts when they lose their pictures, and I don't want that to happen to you. I'm also going to urge you to not worry so much about the camera settings. I know some of you, as I was flipping through those pictures earlier, you're like, oh, what I really want is for Tony to tell me what shutter speed that one's at, or what's the f-stop number. Why isn't he telling me what I need to know? ISOs, f-stops. Chill, it's not that important. The important things in photography, like I've said, the storytelling, the art, the mood, the lighting, the composition. I would rather you just leave your camera in auto, just put it on that green auto mode and go worry about those things for a year or two before you start worrying about specific f-stops and stuff. But also, you can't just take camera settings from one picture and apply them to some scene, because you could use my camera settings to take a picture of the Ledge Lighthouse, but if it's a different season, or if the sun is behind a cloud, or if it's earlier or later in the day, or if you have a different camera or a different lens, it's all going to be meaningless. Like, everything is going to change. You can't just take somebody's camera settings. We will talk about camera settings and what are the correct settings, how to figure out what the correct settings are. But you can't copy camera settings from another person. So you don't have to, less time spent looking at people's metadata. I'll say it one more time. Don't worry so much about the gear. Whatever camera you have now is probably fine. If it's not good enough, it will become painfully obvious. It's okay. There will be a couple of times when your pictures don't turn out perfectly, and it won't be the end of the world. Sometimes you'll miss focus. Sometimes they'll be noisier than they'd have to be. But so many people go out there and spend thousands of dollars on stuff and then don't ever actually use it. And I don't want you to do that. I don't want photography to be a money pit for you. I want it to be something that enriches your life. Think about the art of it and get done as much as you can with the gear that you have. That's it. I hope that was helpful. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.